Good afternoon. My name's Sam. I am from Sydney, Australia. And today I want to talk to you about the topic of making it stick. How do you rewire large and complex organisations for outcomes and create an expectation of continuous change? So I'm going to break the talk into three components today. We're going to start with finding your why. Going on a change journey is hard, and being clear on your purpose and what drives you is really important. We're going to talk about some of the complexities of wiring up a complex adaptive system. And of all the things you could do, and you should be doing, what's one thing that you could do, just from my lessons and sort of journey? So I want to start just by telling the story of a team. So this is a value stream. They exist in a large and complex organisation. It's one of 1,000 teams in this company. If we zoom in to a reasonably sized value stream, within Dunbar's number, there's about 15 teams in this structure. They've got a clear customer goal, and they're working to replace a critical monolithic application. And if we zoom in even further to this team, we've got Team Neo that's at the centre. I believe this is really the unit of organisations, that cross-functional team, two-pizza team, as we've heard many times today. The team has been through quite a journey. A few years ago, they used to be pay-to-play. So they were building features based on whoever had money to give to them. And they had a moment years ago where they stood back and they said, actually, we could turn this around. If we publish a roadmap of our product, maybe teams could give us feature requests and we could prioritise and build common capabilities for everyone. And that was a game changer for this team, just thinking about themselves as a team and how they interact with the organisation. And they've been listening to these talks at DevOps Enterprise Summit. They've heard about team topologies, team APIs. They're leveraging all of these techniques to get their work done day to day. They've shipped an MVP, big step. They've got some pilot users, but the next things to come, which is deploying into the main customer app, where there's no turning back. And at this moment, they start to face in to the realities of existing in this large and complex organisation. There's the concept of risk and security that start to face them. And so this team has done a really bold thing for the organisation. A few years ago, they had a small security incident. And that really sort of sparked this conversation with security about the modern services that they were delivering. And they used the opportunity to bring security into the team, and they went on a 2-year journey. I'm saying 2 years for the purpose of the slide, but it was probably 4. A 4-year journey to take security on this, embedding them into the team, embedding them into what they're delivering. And so there were highs and lows through the journey. Leadership changed. They had to restart the conversations. But at the end of the day, what they built and that partnership with security ended up scaling for other teams. And there were hundreds of other teams that started to leverage this same approach. So if you zoom out, to get things done in this organisation, there are lots of central areas of the business. They call them enabling teams that come and ask questions through the team's journey. What are you working on? What are the priorities? When will you deliver? What are the risks? Engagement in procurement, legal, privacy. And then to top it all off, sustainability pops out and says, how are you contributing to our ESG goals? And all of these asks come at different points in time. They come from different templates. All asking the same question, but at different points in time. My kids play this game on my iPad for any Seinfeld fans, Frogger, crossing the road with with the game console. This is often the feeling that when I watch my kids play, I have a bit of PTSD about trying to ship things into production. It just so happens, as John Smart published in Sooner Safer Happier, many traditional organisations live in 90% wait time with 10% flow. And so, the opportunity is massive in order to enable companies to empower their teams to actually ship things. And so there comes a point, for me, it happened to be at a baggage carousel on Australia Day, coming back from Munich, where I bumped into the CEO of one of Australia's largest organisations. Similar, David mentioned this morning from HSBC, the printer conversation that triggered his transformation journey. And so, on occasions, you're presented with a choice. Do you continue to work in the system and work to empower your teams, work within the constraints that you've been given, deliver value, and experience the joy of working in these cross-functional teaming structures to get things done? There's no better feeling than being able to ship value to customers. But for some of us, you've got the opportunity to work on the system and to think about rewiring the system and solving some of those systemic impediments that are not just affecting your team, but affecting the whole organisation. Now, this is not, this can be, especially in large organisations, a complicated task. You will be targeted. There's a high chance of personal failure, and it'll be quite frustrating. However, it's extremely rewarding to solve complex problems, and that's what I know drives me. And so working on the system in large and complex organisations comes with a health warning, and you need to look out for yourself. One key way you can look out for yourself is to be really clear on your purpose. For me, I love teams. I love that feeling of when a team can come together, they can get something done, they feel satisfaction in their work. There's no better feeling coming home from work knowing that you've shipped something, that you've added value, and you've delivered. And so that's why I take on this task and have taken on this task in the past. That's what drives me. I want to help organisations have more teams that feel that same sense of accomplishment and achievement. And I think the other key thing I've learned in this journey is also really dig into what's motivating others that you're taking on the journey. I've got many stories which I won't go into today, where asking the 5 whys of other people, really getting behind their motivations, can really actually unlock progress when you understand what really motivates people. So, you've chosen to work on the system. Congratulations. You've just taken on, either directly or indirectly, a whole bunch of domains that are all interrelated and are quite complicated. Then you stand back and you think, actually, what have I taken on? I'm not just solving for one business unit. Actually, the scope of this transformation is the whole organisation, and every business unit has processes that are encrusted, leadership behaviours that are embedded, and they're all wired entirely differently. How can we bring people together around our organisational mission and purpose to deliver value? I've got this saying, and I find myself quoting it. I've quoted it to myself probably every other day for the last 7 or 8 years on this journey. There's always a bigger fish. There is always something bigger at play that you need to be thinking about. You need to be curious. You need to be the first to read the annual report when the company publishes it. You need to be understanding what's happening at the board level, what's happening on the ground, pulling all this information to help you think about the scope of what you're doing and the impact you're working to have. There's always something bigger at play, and working that out can save you years if you can think through it. And so you do the sums. You think back to that journey that Neo went on behalf of the organisation to change the mindset, change the processes and practices of security, which was that 2 to 4 year journey. And you start to think about all these other things that have been written up on a slide by a management consultant that sparked the transformation, changing mindsets, DevOps, secure coding practices, organisational design, project to product. All of these topics are incredibly important to solve. However, they're all interconnected. You can't run them all at the same time. You can't stand up a Gantt chart and track them through to completion. They're highly interrelated and highly connected. And so when you're leading a transformation, you need to think, we can't push this on the organisation. You can try, you can spend years convincing people to change, but how do you create a dynamic where there's a pull-through from all these areas and they start to pull through the change? Now, for me, being part of this community for the last however many years now has been incredibly useful. So having those customer journeys to be able to share with peers and leaders in different situations, all the books that are available through the authors that participate, these have been incredibly helpful tools on my journey, and I encourage you to dig in and share those tools with your organisation. I'm not going to cover all these today because I think all the topics, if you get across the other talks, you'll be learning and digging into these specific topics in many of the other talks. And constraint is a good thing. And so really in thinking about the talk, I was trying to think, what were the couple of things, what was the one thing that helped have a breakthrough and that I've seen work, even recognising you need to do all these things. And so one of those things that has a cut through on all topics is thinking about, what are we doing? What is the work? What are people doing? And how does that work connect to our company goals? And often companies are living in PowerPoint. They're living in spreadsheets. I used to have this practice that I did where every Monday I would walk 40 floors of a building from top to bottom, just doing circuits, getting a pulse of the organisation to understand what was going on. I'd see pockets of teams. I'd see people living in PowerPoint, and that just gave me an edge to be able to connect the dots quickly within the organisation. But how do we make work visible to everyone? And having that work visible and the outcomes of teams visible can then allow you to drive a whole bunch of these other changes. So the one area I'd like to talk about today is how could you create a pattern interrupt? Got all these teams, all these central teams asking for different things. How could you create a common tempo, a common heartbeat in the organisation where people come together to share what they're working on? And how could we use all the lessons that we've learned over the years from the IT side of the world? How could we use these learnings around modern software architecture, modularization, to create this pattern interrupt? So I'm going to talk about using a quarterly business review as this common tempo, a vehicle to drive change. And how can that be used to create transparency across the organisation? I might just ask, how many of you participate in a quarterly business review within your organisation today? Just hands up, maybe 50%. No, that's great. So I want to talk to you about thinking about quarterly business review. It might exist already or it may not exist. How could you help your leaders, or if you're leading this, how could you think about this process with a product mindset and a modular architecture? So one way is creating this QBR artifact. And you start very simple. It can happen on a page, ideally in Confluence or a shared visible document that allows teams at a certain level, maybe the value stream or above level, to record the outcomes they're aiming to achieve for the next quarter. Now, this solves an indisputable need. Who would push back on saying that you don't need to share your goals? There'll probably be many that do. But for the company, this as a leader, this is something that can't easily be challenged. The challenge is then scaling that across the organisation. And so when we think about this artifact, what are the design principles? It needs to be lightweight. We don't want to create another ask of the business. It needs the ability to scale across the whole business, end to end. It needs to be open and transparent. Components, componentize. So we're starting with OKRs, but as I'll share with you, we can then move on to wiring up other parts of the system over time, progressively. And we want these components to be owned in a distributed way. We want the strategy team or the teams that care about goals to be thinking and owning the component here, just as funding might be finance that pulls through into this artifact. So in creating this artifact, how can we use those product techniques that we use with our customers and shipping product? We have feedback cycles. So we create this artifact. We have a process of QBR where it's filled in. We take feedback from the value stream leads, the leaders that are participating in the process, and we incorporate that feedback to solve problems for the next quarter. We publish release notes on a quarterly basis to say, here's the next thing that we're solving for in this common heartbeat of the organisation. And we slowly, progressively expand into other topics. Initially, what I like to call minimal viable wiring. What's that minimum wiring to start with before you then can wire other aspects, such as funding, workforce, maybe software or security and risk practices into this common heartbeat. And we want this to happen at the right level. Obviously, teams need to work with each other, use methods of like team topologies to work out their interaction modes. Here we're talking about a minimal viable coordination layer that fits within your organisation. So one example where this has been, that I feel is where this has been done really well, is Telstra, which is Australia's largest telecommunications provider. They've faced a number of years of disruption with what's called the National Broadband Network launching in Australia. And they created a QBR that was deployed initially in a few business units, but is now scaled across all business units and even their wholly owned companies. And it's a common heartbeat that they've maintained despite the winds changing and leadership changing. They've been able to hold to this heartbeat over a number of years now. As it says in this quote, even just publishing the OKRs of the company and of the teams, just in the last 12 to 18 months, that page on Confluence has been viewed 17,000 times. And that's just the top line goals. And so if you think about behind all of that, there are leaders coming to reflect on what is going on, what the priorities are, what others are doing, and an opportunity for them to align and improve what they're doing. And so, if you take this modular approach, we're starting with planning as a monolith where there's all those independent asks of teams that are distracting them as they come through. We're launching an MVP where we're sharing common goals across the organisation to create that heartbeat. And then we're moving on to other topics, funding, which I feel is the root cause of dysfunction of many teams, impeding many teams. There's a whole bunch of other topics that you can move on to. Even the concept of defining what work might stop is a significant cultural milestone for an organisation. Being able to say to your peers, we are choosing to stop this work over the newest priorities that have come in. Getting a company to that point can take years of work for leaders that feel that they just have to keep these initiatives running, when actually the leadership of the organisation is encouraging them to stop and change. And so, using this vehicle of change can create, this transparency to drive some of these outcomes. So I won't talk through this slide; it'll be in the pack. But again, use all the knowledge that you're learning across your DevOps journey. Thinking about how do you wire the company operating system using these same terms, or how do you help your company do this? How do you create a system that's observable? You're testing and checking in with users. Is it usable? It needs to be reliable. There's market commitments to meet. It needs to be resilient. This system needs to be resilient to fires that pop up that then erode that sort of tempo of the organisation. And so there's a huge backlog of things that you can solve for. Wiring up the system of work. We won't talk through all these today. Again, the conference and many of the topics that you'll hear speak into many of these areas. But I've found that taking this approach, you still need to deploy the changes. You still need to go on the journey with many different areas, partnering with them through the ups and the downs to drive these different parts of the movement. But having that common heartbeat, I've found, is one way to help things move forward, to create that transparency, to focus on the work and the outcomes when there can be a lot of other noise distracting from that delivery. So I've got some recommended reading on the top here, but I'd love to chat. What are the war stories where things have gone wrong as you've been wiring up your organisation when working at large scale? What are all those unintended consequences of trying to connect the system when maybe it shouldn't have actually been connected? I would love to hear your stories and share some more of my own. And then, also just keen to think, how could we speed up this journey? It does feel like on many topics, such as the work taxonomy or work breakdown structure, every organisation is going through a multi-year journey to define what that means for them. And I think there's more stories that we can all share with each other on, the hacks and practices that have helped speed that journey up, factoring in these complex systems of people and process. So thank you. Thanks for the time.